the whole thing for the promo. The sign out there. Here, take this off.
Oh, wrong direction. So you're ready to go. You're right there. All right, cool.
Squeals.
Sterling's ready to go. You look different in person than you do on email.
Matt, do you want the air lights? I just left the ones outside are out.
Oh, I think
Thank you. Your voices from the future, and they're calling all of our youths. Whose voices do you hear? Whose voices do you heed? And how do you know?
I think it's so interesting that if you walk around campus, there are historic markers sort of sporadically placed. There's one on Bascom Hill that talks about campus being a center for protest, but it doesn't mention at all that the black student protest and the black student strikes, for example, was one of the largest, if not the largest protest on campus.
So my first name is Harvey and my last name is Long. I arrived in 2014 at the University of Wisconsin-Madison to pursue a master's degree in library and information studies.
When I came in 2014, as a part of my fellowship in the Library and Information Studies program, I worked in the university archives. And I noticed that black students were essentially erased from the narrative of the university. Everything that we have in the university archives is from the perspective of the administration. So the black student voice, in a sense, is erased. So I immediately wanted to restore this narrative and sort of contextualize the experiences of black students from the perspective of the black student, because it was missing.
Hi, welcome to Cutting Class. I'm Mark Mederson, and the clip you just watched was from Voices, the first of 7 short documentary films we'll be talking about today. All of these films were produced, shot, and edited by University of Wisconsin-Madison students as part of a journalism course. The course, J475, is taught by Pat Hastings. I'm the graduate student assistant for the course. Again, the clip you just watched was part of a film called Voices, produced by our first student filmmaker today, Marquise Mays. Marquise, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. Tell us about that clip that we just watched.
The clip that we just watched is the introduction to my film. It pretty much puts out this bold statement that the University of Wisconsin-Madison doesn't archive or document or save the history of black students on this campus. So that clip was to start off my documentary, to contextualize the reasoning behind looking for this history and why it's so important that we find it.
From pretty much the first day of class, I remember you had a pretty good idea of what you wanted your film to be about. Mm-hmm. Tell me why this topic, the return of the Black Cultural Center to the UW campus, why you felt that this was the story you wanted to tell.
I felt that this story was so necessary to tell because of the fact that a lot of us don't really realize that there was a Black Cultural Center in 1969. I also don't think we also realize what led to the first Black Cultural Center, like the events that led to the first Black Cultural Center, and it was through black student activism, it was through black students saying no and refusing and doing things outside of the box and with new tactics and just a new way of doing things so differently for what was done before, that this story was so necessary to tell, especially like in relation to our current political climate. I feel like currently a lot of black students on this campus and students of color, period, feel helpless. They don't feel welcome. They feel hopeless here. And I want this documentary, I want this story about black students to remind us that we come from a long, long legacy of brilliant, courageous, and brave black students who have trailblazed this campus in so many different ways and have set something up for us in a way for where we can continue to do this and continue to feel the passion for what we do and not feel like we're helpless. And I think this story was so necessary to tell, especially with the new Black Cultural Center opening up so soon, that we take this as our responsibility and our time to really put all into the center. Put all into the center as far as programming, as far as making sure that this space is safe for us in all aspects of our life, and then also expanding blackness in a way, expanding the narrative of blackness, the diaspora of blackness, and also addressing the intersections that lie within blackness. I think this story, the reason why I decided to do it was, one, I wanted people to know about the expansive history of black students on this campus. So it's so necessary because it kind of gets overshadowed a lot by the university archives. So I thought it was a very, very important story to tell.
So for most of the students that take the class, this is their first and probably only documentary film that they'll ever make, but you've made them in the past and you plan on making them in the future. Tell me about your motivation for using the documentary film medium as the way to tell stories.
I find something interesting about being able to remove yourself from like writing someone's story. I find it very interesting because coming into the School of Journalism, I didn't think of myself as a strong writer. And it was something about having to write somebody else's story down and not being able to let them have that medium and let them have that time or that moment to tell it for themselves. I think that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to choose a documentary route. And then also, I think another reason why is because I think currently the way that journalism is going, or how traditional journalism has always been, it's always been focused on being objective and being so, just straight facts and things of that nature. And I think documentary filmmaking or just documentary period kind of allows for emotions to be put into something. I know that coming in as a student journalist, I never wanted to compromise myself for a story. I never wanted to compromise my identity for a story. I feel some type of way when I have to write about race relations, and I didn't want to remove myself just to put something in for a story. So I'd rather do that visually, removing myself from it, but also being able to show what visually is going on. I think that's the reason why I chose documentary filmmaking, and that's why I'm going to continue to do it in the future.
Like I said, and like you said, you have had experience at this before, but what are some things you learned by taking Pat's class, by taking this journalism course, and what are some things you learned through the process of making this film?
I think one thing I learned was patience. This semester was very, very busy, but at the same time, I feel like I had to be patient with myself and be patient with the story and be patient with knowing that I will get the information I need to get. And also, it was very difficult being that the University of Wisconsin-Madison doesn't archive the history as much of Black students. It was so hard to find and recover, and it was so hard to actually find the people who can give me these narratives, who were here during that time. I feel like I've done all that I can within the short amount of time that I had, but I've definitely learned patience and just making sure that I put the story first before technicality.
Marquise, thank you so much for showing us your film, and good luck next year in your senior year.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Now let's take a look at a clip from our next student film. It's called The Other 7% and was produced by a pair of student filmmakers, AJ Garcia and Ken Kozarowski.
I don't have that many memories of us being a family, and then he moved out when I was 4, and then they got divorced when I was 5. So they were only divorced for maybe 9 months, and then he unfortunately committed suicide. Now it's just kind of like I respect his wishes, and obviously I love him and I miss him, and I want the best for him. So I try and live a life that would make him proud. When I was in high school, I started a women's ultra-soft apparel line. I'm wearing it actually. So it's called Angelic NYC. So everything is angel wings. A portion of the profits go to different charities. So for instance, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So that's in honor of my dad. So it's all about being the best person you can be, and realizing that all of us have unlimited potential, and that to just think good thoughts, and hopefully you can be your best person, and then you can transfer that energy onto others and to help other people. I do think I am very happy and that I am very positive, but obviously people look at you in different ways than you look at yourself, if that makes sense. So if people were to describe me I'm sure positive or happy or bubbly would be one of the first things that they would say. My mom calls me her ray of sunshine, and I've always been a sunny person, but it means a lot more to me, I think. I'm not trying to bring anyone else down or more than other people, but being that way does mean a lot to me, and that it breaks my heart to see other people suffer, and that I'm really sensitive, and I pick up on people's feelings and what's going on quickly. So I just feel that it's my purpose basically to spread joy and spread love in the world. So I try and do as much as I can to do that.
That was a clip from The Other 7%. The filmmakers Ken Kozarowski and AJ Garcia are here with me today. First, tell me about about the film itself and about what is exactly The Other 7%.
Sure. So at its core, the documentary is about how students on this campus deal with depression. And the title we got from stats that we found from just last year, where 93% of college students in the nation, even at their lowest point, would choose life. And the other 7% seriously considered suicide. So we wanted to explore how people on this campus have dealt with such an intimate issue like depression, and in most cases from who we interviewed, took things from that and actually learned to better themselves and learn some things about themselves.
AJ, the other 7%?
Yeah, we chose to tell this story through the lens of college students because it was the other 7% who were college students who seriously contemplated suicide a year ago. So while not all the students have stories, their own stories of depression and suicide, you see that, like a lot of diseases, all of us are affected by it. And so we chose that this was the best way to communicate that message was through the lens of college students.
This is obviously not an easy story to tell. The stories that the students give you in the film are very personal. Was it difficult to find students who were willing to talk this openly about the topic?
Initially, when we looked into the topic, we thought that it would be tough, but like I said, it's not all the stories are people who have considered suicide necessarily. So everyone's been affected by it. So you hear stories of people who have lost someone to suicide. You see people that are dealing with depression, other people that have considered it at an earlier time in their life. So once we changed our approach and realized that we didn't need to talk to only people that contemplated suicide, it became a little bit easier because you see that we are still all affected by it.
And the people that we talked to were just very vocal and really open to talking about it from the beginning, and they were pretty removed from their events, years ago, and so they've had the time to really reflect on how some struggles in their life actually come around and help them in a different situation. We had one person who went through these suicidal struggles, and then actually from his experiences, he was able to actually help coach someone who was struggling through the very same thing.
I don't know if you guys have thought about this necessarily in this process, but I'd like each of you to tell me what you hope that viewers, what the audience will take away from this film after they've watched it. Ken, you first.
Sure. I think for that 93% out there who doesn't have these kinds of thoughts and are doing well according to them, I think the key thing is for them to be able to know that some people, even right next to you or in your classroom, could be going through some very serious things. So being able to reach out and try and develop deeper relationships with people and actually try and make lasting, meaningful relationships, because with our culture and social media, it's very easy to be kind of superficial in the relationships that you build. So for the 93% out there who have not contemplated suicide, I hope that they realize that some people close to them or a little ways away might actually be going through something serious, and if they take the time and effort, they can actually be helpful in the recovery process.
The first line of the documentary is, I believe that happiness is a journey and not a destination. And so I think that's the message that I want people to understand from this. The stories take a little bit of a turn about midway through, and you realize that everyone copes with it in their own ways. Some people rely on therapy, others medication, others just do their own things like journal or produce content of their own or anything to just keep themselves motivated on a daily basis. So I think it's important for those other 7%, the people that are struggling, to realize that you can't look at someone and think that they're recovering the right way, or look at them and say, I need to mimic what they're doing. It's your own journey, and you kind of have to stick to what you know best and understand that you're going to get there. There is a light at the end of what can seem like a pretty dark and scary tunnel, but there's no textbook way to get there.
I know a lot of journalism is done through what's called a dispassionate observation, so that you don't become part of the story. Did you guys feel like at any point during this that it was almost too personal, or that it was affecting you as the filmmakers making this product?
I was behind the camera a lot, so setting up these shots in their very intimate spaces, but they were all very comfortable. I know several times AJ, when he was conducting these interviews, he'd ask them if things were going okay and if it's all right for us to delve into this topic, and so we made that very clear at every serious junction, and they were all very forthright and forthcoming in wanting to talk about it. So I think AJ really handled it very well.
Thank you. The thing that I thought was tough was that we did speak to only college students. So like Ken said, you never know if the person right next to you is dealing with this or having these kinds of thoughts. So it definitely puts a little perspective on it. I found myself, while we were producing this, kind of walking down the street and looking at people a little bit differently and kind of wondering what goes on inside their minds. So it definitely had an effect and made me think about the people around me differently and understand that the image that people give off is not necessarily how they're feeling. So that's where it had more of a personal effect.
I can tell you that from someone who's made films, great work. It's a powerful piece of work, and for first-time filmmakers, that's saying a lot.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, sure. Now let's take a look at a clip from our next student film from Taylor Palmby. Here's a snippet from Taylor's film, Too Much Woman.
So, the first time I realized I was a woman.
The first time I realized that I was a woman.
The first time that I realized that I was a woman.
I went to a party at a senior's house, and all the guys were friends with my boyfriend. And I knew them from like the football team and around school, but not a lot of people knew me because I was younger. And the party was a few blocks away from my house. And at the end of the night, these older boys asked if they could drive me home, which I took as them just being nice because I knew them. And when we got to my house, they pulled up at the end of my driveway, they wouldn't go up. And I went to hop out, and the guy sitting in the back seat next to me stopped me, and he was like, wait, like we didn't get to talk. And I was like, okay, like what do you want to talk about? And he was like, well, do you play sports? And I was like, I run, like, and he grabbed my leg and like looked me in the eye, and he was like, I can tell you run, and like started like rubbing my leg. So I was like, okay, and like just kind of like pushed him off and like went to open the door of the car, and he slammed it shut, like reached across me and slammed it shut. And the two boys in the front seat turned around, and Cord was one of the guys. He turned around and looked at Carlito and was like, Carlito, like that's Nick's girlfriend, like you can't be saying that to her. And Carlito was like, oh my bad, like I'm sorry, and like let me go out of the car, and I ran up to my house. And it was just the first time I realized that like I was more valuable as someone else's property than I was in my own right. That my voice as an individual didn't mean as much to these guys as my belonging to like one of their friends.
And he looked at me and said, sweetheart, why don't you ever just fucking smile? I have always been a strong personality, been a leader, and taken a lot of pride in like what being a woman means to me. And for him to come in and just negate that was upsetting beyond belief, but also empowering in the sense that I'm gonna keep doing my thing, and I'm not your sweetheart.
That was a clip from Too Much Woman by student film producer Taylor Palmby. Taylor, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Mark.
Of course. So your film is a bit different than the others in style. So you basically had, as we saw in the clip, the women look directly into the camera and answer questions from you. What was your motivation for choosing that style for the film?
Right, so I really wanted to keep it very simple with the filming technique because I wanted to focus as much as possible on what the women were saying and really give them as much of the spotlight as possible and not have any kind of outside distractions so that viewers could really listen and really watch their faces as they told those stories and see their emotions. And so it was very simplistic in style, but very much that was very much so on purpose.
So tell me about what you learned. I'm sure you had expectations about what these stories were going to be like when you went in, when you were writing the questions for this. What are some things that you learned, some surprises that came up during this process?
Well, this was all really interesting to me because I've never created a documentary before, so it was all very new, and like learning how to edit and put a shot together and lighting was really interesting. But when talking to the women, it surprised me how many of them would be like, well, I have this story, but I also have these 3 other ones. Would you like me to tell those as well? And so I ended up having these women tell all of these different stories, and hearing that it was happening to them not only once, but multiple times. They were recognizing that they were being discriminated against because of their womanhood was really humbling, and the whole experience was really humbling that these women would tell me their stories and felt like I did, that it was important to tell these stories.
I asked this of Ken and AJ, and I'm going to ask the same thing to you. Do you feel like you were affected personally by these stories? Was that surprising to you when these women are sort of opening up to you and telling you these very personal stories?
Yeah, there were times where I would catch myself with goosebumps or tears in my eyes because the stories were so personal and really touching and really, honestly, so aggravating. And after almost every time, I would hug them and say, "I'm so sorry," even though that it wasn't my place to apologize. But it was really a moving experience, and I too found myself catching myself thinking about day-to-day interactions in a different way.
So who do you consider to be sort of the target audience for this? Is it other women, or do you believe it's men who may have done similar things to the stories that the women are telling in the film?
I think that the target audience is everyone, because all of us take a part in these like small acts of discrimination against women. So it's all of our responsibility to make sure that it doesn't happen anymore. And the first step in that responsibility is recognizing that it does happen. I think that oftentimes we think of Madison as this very progressive, very liberal place where things like this don't happen, but all of these women's stories, all of these women are from Madison, and many of these stories took place here. So it's important to recognize that although we think we're progressive and we think we're moving forward, we could still be doing better, and there's still areas where we need to improve.
So I know from basically day one of the class, you were a little concerned about your lack of experience, basically no experience making a film like this, shooting and editing. Tell me how the process went and how you feel about it now.
Well, it was really scary at first, but Pat and you helped so much with lighting and everything, and I watched a lot of like tutorials on YouTube of how to edit. I'm really relieved that it's done, but I'm really excited. It was like one of the most rewarding classes because I feel like I have something really strong to show for it, and that's really exciting, and it's something that I'm proud to share and really excited about.
You should be proud. You did an excellent job. Thank you for coming today to talk about it.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Sure. Our next film also features women, two older Madison women who are, as they say, ditching the rocking chairs. Here's a look at Jamie Shesky's film, The New Retirees.
Retiree Rebels is a reaction to ageism. My partner Mary Helen and I both ran into, in our different circumstances, the outdated idea that the minute you hit retirement, you are in, for some reason, done, doddering, just waiting for death, that kind of thing. It's an old stereotype that is so outdated, no longer fits reality, especially for the newly retiring baby boomers. So Retiree Rebels is basically a reaction to ageism and the changed reality that when you hit retirement or you hit 65 or any of those other milestone kind of markers that we used to have that now meant you were old, doesn't work anymore, it doesn't fit anymore, not even close. We now have a reality, something called the longevity revolution, that says you are not only going to live to retirement age, you are going to live 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, maybe 40 plus years. And most of those front years are going to be active, healthy, engaged years, not rocking chair years. I mean, rocking chair is the perfect metaphor because to sit there and do nothing but to wait for death is that old, awful stereotype, and we're nowhere near that anymore. Now it's a time of new beginnings and engagement. But to get there, to come up against the ageist stereotype, you have to rebel against the rocking chair image. So when we talk about rebels, we really mean rebels, because you have to rebel against the old stereotype in order to live the life you want to live at this point in your life.
That was from The New Retirees. The film's student producer, Jamie Shesky, joins me now. Jamie, welcome.
Thank you.
So as a college senior, a rather young woman, what attracted you to a story about two women who were basically 2 generations older than you?
Well, I think the initial, it's a little surprising to some people, but I think it's important, it's very relevant to all of us because we're all going to get old one day, and if we're lucky, we'll retire. And so I think it's bringing more awareness to, the type of discrimination and just like hurdles that people who are retired they face. I think that's really important to talk about and think about starting from a young age. So yeah.
So did the experience of making the film and meeting these women and talking with them change your personal view at all on growing older and retiring?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people, myself included, had just kind of thought, okay, after retirement, every day is just kind of a holiday, or just kind of you spend it with the grandkids and you don't really do very much. But talking to these two women, I realized that that's not the case, and that doesn't have to be the case. You can still have dreams and goals, and you can still achieve a lot of things after you retire.
How do you think the story of the retiree rebels, these two women, translates to older women as a whole, or as a whole population of retired women?
I think there's this notion that, after you retire, you kind of don't contribute to society anymore. And both Mary Helen and Carol, the two main women of this who starred in this documentary, they both have told me their experience of how after they retired, they felt, they hit these hurdles. Like they both, they wanted to write books, and they were told, oh, you're retired, you can't, and that was very frustrating for them. And I think, they can really inspire other retired women and retired people in general to, realize it's not the end of your life. You probably have maybe 10 or 20 more years, depending on what age you retire. You still have a lot of years to go, so make the most of it.
I'm going to ask you a question that's similar to the one that I asked Taylor about your audience for this. Do you see it more as other retirees who can look at these women as an example of what they could be doing, or is it for younger people who you want to see retired people in a different light?
I think both of those groups of people that you mentioned are good, a good audience. Actually, everyone really, because I think whether you are retired and you're, kind of feeling lost or confused, and want to be inspired, and otherwise, if you're like me, younger and I know retired people, and just I think I didn't have the view of them that I have now, and I think this is important to try and share with everyone.
Excellent. I think you did a great job on the film, and thank you for coming here today to talk about it.
Thank you.
Now let's take a look at a clip from our next student film about a group of wrestlers in Northern Illinois hoping to make the big leagues. It's called Dirty Boys Club and was produced by UW-Madison junior Lauren Cox.
We have every capability of being as good as any of the hottest independent wrestling organization that's out there right now. All we need to do is start, everybody's got to start pitching in. Do you want to do this? Why, like, for example, Connor, why are you here? What do you want to get out of wrestling?
I just really like wrestling as an art form, but I understand it better.
Yeah, and you want to contribute to that, right?
Sure.
Okay, what do you want to get out of it, John? Learn. Okay, what do you want out of it? What do you want to do with wrestling?
Making my life.
Okay, what do you want to do? That's the reason we take this seriously, because we want to get to that next level, or at least make this the next level. Chase reffed for a year and a half. He sold hot dogs. Okay? That's the champion, two-time champion of our company right now. You understand? Go the extra mile. That's what it is. That's the first step, all right? He's got more connections than frickin' Connect 4 on a global scale.
And not to mention my brain.
All right, let's not suck your
No, I'm serious.
And that's the biggest opportunity in the Midwest. There is no other company in the Midwest that runs on a weekly basis. That is a privilege. You don't have to set this ring up. All you have to do is come here, vacuum, get this goddamn mat in there on show day, take it off on practices, make sure the chairs are straight, and vacuum all this shit, get all the concessions. That's a privilege. You're always learning. You're never going to be as good as what they portray on TV. You're always learning. You're always learning. Even those assholes are still learning.
You're always learning.
Always learning. So, what I'm trying to say is, watch wrestling every day. This is your life. This is what you want your life to be. Make it that way.
That was a clip from Dirty Boys Club, and the film's producer, Lauren Cox, is with me today. Lauren, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Right, I know when you first started this project, it was basically going to be about the wrestling, and we talked about this, about trying to see maybe if we could find some stories about the wrestlers. Did you find that in the process of making this film?
Yeah, for sure. I grew a deeper understanding and appreciation for sort of the struggle that these people go through. I mean, I wouldn't consider myself like the world's largest wrestling fan or anything. I mean, it was just something that I know someone who's done this kind of thing before, and it always seems super interesting to me that the way these guys come together and they really sacrifice a lot of their time and money to perform, even in front of really small crowds, just on that whim, that dream that someday they could become, you know, a superstar in that the same way a lot of, you know, young professional athletes do. So I thought this was a really cool way to get behind the scenes of that story and get to know some of these wrestlers chasing their dreams.
So for me, journalism is basically all about storytelling, whether it's in print or in film, like you did with Dirty Boys Club. Tell me about what you learned about the process of storytelling through film in this class compared to other courses you've taken, which have mostly been, I'm assuming, in print.
Yeah, and this more than anything I've noticed, I don't think I could tell this story nearly as well in an article, you know, in a newspaper or even just online. I mean, to be able to capture both the sights and sounds of wrestling and sort of the characters that these people portray, because there's a big part of their progression to the next level is not even just their wrestling ability, but it's the character. The WWE wants to see them be electric and be bright and loud and funny and get the crowd's attention. I don't think you can quite capture that as much in a written story as you can in the visual art like this.
Do you consider this to be a story about wrestling, or is there a story behind the story here?
It's definitely a broader story about someone who sacrifices so much in his life to be able to chase his dream. I mean, I don't consider this very much a wrestling story as much as it is about a man pursuing something that he loves and really sacrificing so much throughout his life. And you know, he tells a story about how he was ready to sign up for college, and he has the check, and he's going to turn it in to pay for his first semester of tuition, and he's about to turn it in. And he said he thought to himself, if I turn this check in, I don't know if I'm ever going to know if I could be a wrestler. And so he changes his mind. He goes, you know, he works full time now at a heating and cooling company, but that just kind of supports what he's doing now. That's sort of just the side goal for what he's trying to build out of his life. And I think that's just such an interesting story that a lot of people can relate to.
So we got a taste of it there in your clip, that these guys use a bit of colorful language.
Yes.
At some point, were you concerned about that for your film as a filmmaker?
Yeah, for sure. I think those guys, a lot of them have no filter, especially when there's no audience around and they're just on their own practicing. I mean, they know there's a camera in front of them, but they don't really seem to care too much as far as censoring themselves. But I think that's part of what makes their characters fun and what allows them to express themselves really truly the way they are. I think if I had asked them to, you know, watch what they were saying and watch their language, I don't think I would have gotten the same expression, the same excitement, the same kind of natural flow from their characters, not only as wrestlers, but also as human beings on camera in interviews.
I think you did an excellent job with the film.
You.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good luck on your senior year.
Thanks.
Now let's take a look at a clip from our next student film. It's called Startup and was produced by Cadence Bambanek.
Spring break was last week. Of course, I spent 15 hours a day, like, working towards stuff. So it's not pretty, it's not glamorous. Entrepreneurship isn't. I feel like there's kind of a fallacy in society today that it's, you know, easy payouts. You become a 20-year-old billionaire, and that's just not the truth.
Hello, my name is Francisco Moya. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Pathogenomica. So right now we have about 32 teams that are showcasing their technology, their idea, their IP, their invention or prototypes.
3.8. Those are good. That's better than your savings. Like, it's still gonna be better currently, but only more people will want to get on our app as new rates become better.
Yeah. How do we also stop them from just, like, every time the interest rates go up, selling what they have and then buying the new one?
I'm Tyler, and I'm a senior studying finance and computer science.
I'm Aaron. I'm also a senior studying computer science and math.
Dex is an app and web service for investors of any size to get access to corporate bonds of their favorite companies, which is a safer investment than the stock market, but still offers significant returns.
And it's a market that has not really been available to anyone that's trying to make like smaller trades. It's only available for really, really big players.
My name is Francisco Moya, and I'm a civil and environmental PhD candidate.
And my name is Jacqueline Mejia, and I'm a PhD student in the Environmental Chemistry and Technology program.
My name is Pamela Camejo, and I'm a PhD student in the Civil and Environmental Engineering.
When we started Pathogenomica, our goal was to revolutionize pathogen detection technologies by using DNA sequencing, which is what we're familiar with. And we basically want to achieve the ultimate public health goal of preventing outbreaks. So if we can prevent outbreaks, we can save lives, and we can also save our customers, which are big companies that produce and distribute products, a lot of them.
That was from Startup. It was produced by student filmmaker Cadence Bambanek. Cadence, welcome.
Thank you.
So your film basically covered a competition. It was an event. Tell me about the event that you covered in the film.
So I'm the Vice President of Transcend Engineering, which is a student organization on campus focused on supporting other students who want to pursue entrepreneurship or their own innovative ideas. And the competition, this is the second year that we've hosted it. We had about 30 teams and 100 students competing, and there was a panel of 4 judges who reviewed the ideas and awarded $40,000 in money.
So as you said, you were part of the organization. In addition to that, you were part of organizing the competition, organizing this event.
Yep.
Do you feel like that made it easier for you to cover it for the film, or actually more difficult?
So I kind of want to wind back up a little bit and start. When I came into this class, I was thinking, I was kind of on, so I come from a digital and print journalism background, and I'm at the point where I want to get into writing about more serious and deeper things. And so the first topic that I broached this class with, I wanted to do something more serious, but in approaching film, I realized that it's a different level of access, and people, if you're trying to do something really serious, it's more challenging than if you're trying to put something together for print. So then when I decided that that original idea wasn't going to work out very well, I looked around at what I did have access to, and because I'm the Vice President of Transcend Engineering, and I'm the one helping communicate with these 30 student teams, I had that access and ability to interview people and talk with them, and they were really comfortable and really excited to talk with me. So yeah, it made it easier.
I know you were concerned, like some of the others who were going to be producing a documentary film for the first time at the beginning of this semester. Tell me about how you developed your skill of making this film throughout this semester.
Yeah, I had never worked with video in any capacity before this semester, and I'm really happy I took this class because now I've taken that dip into that practice. Yeah.
Did you find it more difficult, less difficult than you thought it was going to be when you started?
I don't know if I don't think I had any expectations about, I didn't really have a way to gauge what that would be like. But I definitely think it's still something more challenging for me than writing. But I know the same with writing, the more time I spend doing it, it's going to come easier. So.
Well, congratulations on completing the film, and congratulations on your impending graduation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, a quest to fulfill a bucket list of sorts. Student filmmaker Olivia Bruce is graduating and realized she needed to complete her Bucky list. Item number 23, skinny dip in Lake Mendota. And in April in Madison, that's a body-numbing experience. Here's a clip from Before I Wisco.
So we are down to the wire here, which means this is my last trip to the lake before I get in. So I'm gonna check the temperature as a matter of principle, but to be honest, I'd actually prefer not to know, because at this point, there's nothing else I can do except for, well, dive on in. All right, so today is the day. It is 36 degrees outside, and I guarantee it's not any warmer in that water, but I have to do it. This is on my bucket list, documentary's due, and I'm running out of time. So here goes. I have my poncho on for obvious reasons. It will be coming off, and that's the part I'm worried about. Here's hoping I can swim. Oh my God, just these initial steps are f***ing cold. All right, I don't think I'm gonna do this with my shoes on. Whew, this is the panic setting. It's cold in here, and it's been a long morning already, and we're just getting started. All right, my body's in. Oh my God, it's so f***ing cold. Sorry for swearing, it's really cold. Woo! Yeah! Woo! I lost a shoe, but that's okay. On Wisconsin!
That was UW-Madison student Olivia Bruce taking a brief dip in Lake Mendota. Olivia, welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi. Before we get to the swim, and we're going to get to that because it was hilarious, tell me exactly what is the Bucky List?
Yeah, so the Bucky List is actually put out by the Badger Herald. It's a list of 50 things every UW-Madison senior should do before they graduate. There's a number of them ranging from exploring Willie Street to taking a bike ride through the Arboretum, and then obviously a few more adventurous ones like skinny dipping in Lake Mendota.
How many items on the list?
50.
50, okay. Tell me about your motivation for choosing the Bucky List as the subject for your film.
Yeah, so I love my school. I'm actually pretty sad about the fact that I'm graduating. I've had an incredible time here, and so to be honest, I wanted to kill two birds with one stone. I wanted to complete the Bucky List of my own accord, and I figured, you know, this could be a really nice commemorative piece for when I graduate.
So the structure of your film has you starting with Lake Mendota and trying to make this swim at the beginning of the semester. The lake was still frozen,
right.
But you had to complete it in order to complete the film in time to finish the class in April in Madison. And for people who don't know, that's a tough time to go swimming. Tell me, what was the air temperature and water temperature that day, that fateful day that you took the swim?
I believe the air temperature, so I didn't want to go in the evening because, to be honest, I didn't want to deal with trying to light that. And so we went in the morning. I believe it was around 6 a.m. So it must have been, I would say, right around 36 degrees. And the water was, I believe, 40 degrees. So it was honestly paralyzingly cold. It was really quite something.
So tell me about some of the other things on the list that you completed in order to complete your Bucky List, some of the highlights for you.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think I consider the whole thing a highlight reel, which is kind of how I described it on our website. But also, I think one of the biggest highlights was actually meeting the chancellor. I kind of prided myself on, you know, we go to a very big school, and I got an individualized tour of the office and a nice little handshake and a photo. And it was just super special. I mean, I know that sounds a little cliche, but I think she's, you know, a face of the university, and I can now say she knows my face. So it was a good time.
Well, I think the entire film was pretty much a good time. I think you had fun making it.
Yeah.
And it was fun to watch. So thank you for coming on today and talking about it.
Of course. Thank you.
And I want to thank you for watching Cutting Class. If you would like to see Olivia's or any of these student-produced films in their entirety, go to our website, uwcuttingclass.wordpress.com. You'll find the full version of these under the Films tab on the site, and also more about all of our student filmmakers and this class. I want to also thank you for supporting the University of Wisconsin-Madison. This is a perfect example of the wonderful work being done by educators and students on this campus. For all of the students and for their instructor, Pat Hastings, I want to thank Wisconsin Public Television and their crew, as well as our director, Peter Kleppen, for making this show possible. Again, thank you for watching, and on Wisconsin.